I'm using the IDS here to drain the fuel tank for this truck into a clean container. Doesn't look that clean, but that's okay. And I'm using a factory style cap. You can do this using the test port that's down underneath. Whichever you want to use, it doesn't really matter. Or you can decide not to drain the tank, whatever you want to do. Normally the first thing we do is we drain the tank. While draining the tank, I went ahead and got everything pulled out of the box. Basically, we got the filter bracket assembly here. It's got your post-pump filter on it, your pre-pump filter on it. We got a gauge, your regulator for your regulated return. We've also got your fittings for your sending unit. We've got your lines that are completely assembled right here for the back of your heads. And then for your front of the heads, we have a bag that's labeled head fittings. And then we even send you out some extras in case you want to change things up. It's all comes supplied with all the line that you need. Your pickup tube usually is already attached to your 5/8 feed line. That's what you see right here. And this is your 3/8 line. This is what you're going to use for your return, as well as some of your feed on the front of the heads. And then this fitting right here is your Y block. You can choose to put 90s or 45s here, but that's completely up to you. I send this out, and you can pretty much do however you want to do it, whatever suits your truck the best. Here's the factory fuel pump you'll find on most 6 liters. This plug right here, the one I'm pointing to, is the one that you would have to remove in order to hook up my fuel system. It's also the one that if you were to snip the line right there and just put power and ground to, that would power this pump on if you don't have the IDS to power the fuel system on. Alternatively, you can also take this line right here. You can take this line off, you know, this guy right here, and put that into a tank. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. This is the sending unit on your truck. In this particular case, you see the bed rail. It's right here. You got to make sure that whenever you put your new pickup tube in, that you do not have to worry about coming in contact with that. In this case, you would want to put the pickup tube somewhere towards the rear of the fuel sending unit. That way it is out of the way of that bed rail. In this case, it's going to be going towards the center of the truck since this is a crew cab short bed. You'll see that in your instructions on how you're supposed to set it up. You got to take your fuel tank straps down. You'll see right here, there's a couple of them. Once you take your skid plate off and your fuel tank straps down, you can lower this fuel tank down a little bit. Also, don't forget these 2 connections right here. As you lower it, you want to lower it maybe about 6 to 8 inches because you have a wiring connection that you need to undo on top of the sending unit. All of your fuel lines that go forward on a complete kit, you're going to be removing from the tank all the way up. Every part of the factory fuel system will be removed. Locations that you can do on your Ford pickup truck. In this case, we have a crew cab short bed, so we have a lot of room in between the transfer case and the fuel tank. So this particular customer is going to get an inside bottom mount. Now notice that there are 2 bolt hole locations so that you can also decrease the depth or increase the depth of the install. It's really up to you, doesn't really matter. You could also install it on the top lip on the bottom if you so desire. Alternatively, you could mount it on the bottom lip of the top of the frame rail or on the top lip of the top frame rail. Either way is completely fine. All that matters is that it's installed using the 2 3/8 bolts that you're supplied with your kit. If you have to mount the kit on the outside of the frame rail, this is an example of an outside top mount. Here's an example of an outside bottom mount. 1 inch in all the way down on this frame rail, I made sure that the fuel system bracket is going to fit in between the fuel tank and the transfer case, and then I used a centering punch to start me off a hole. From there forward, it will be 13 inches on the center in order to align the bracket on the frame. I've got my holes drilled, once again on 13-inch centers, a little bit bigger than 3/8 of an inch, and I'm ready to mount my bracket. Make sure that you put the vibration isolator in between the bracket and the frame rail when you install it, like so. Make sure you remember to lubricate the nuts before you install them on the fuel system bracket. Here you'll see the vibration isolation mat is sandwiched in between the frame and the fuel bracket. You'll also notice that the bolts accompanied by washers are in place. And then you'll see the fuel system is installed equal distance in between the fuel tank and the transfer case. You'll notice that there's already 2 terminals attached to the A1000. Do not touch them. They are already set up the way they need to be set up and covered to keep them from corroding. You'll notice that there's a shorter wire. This wire is for your ground. You can use any bolt that you can find on the frame rail to do your ground setup. Even this one up here. Typically what I do is I wire wheel down the frame, attach my ground, and then paint over it. Nice bare metal nail on both sides of the frame for me to attach a nut and bolt in order to attach my ground. Measure out how long the line needs to be. Cut it. Skin it. And then make sure you heat shrink the fitting. Now I would probably wait to attach that ground as well as run your power wire up to the relay until after you get all of your factory fuel lines out of the frame rail, which you can see right in back behind there. They'll be taken out once I drop the fuel tank, which is what I'm doing now. Drop the tank, don't forget the vent line, the electrical connector, your two fuel lines, which I just cut since we're replacing all the factory fuel lines, and then your front vent. Take all the little black plastic holders apart like that in order to get to the fuel lines that are behind them. You want to take these fuel lines out all the way forward. To take a blunt object, you can also use a chisel, but be careful because you might break these pieces. I just set them right there on the edge. Take this off. Take your sending unit out. Now this is optional, you don't have to do this, but if you reach inside with a pair of push lock cutters, you can cut the vent tube and the fill tube on the inside. The reason you want to do that is it'll allow you to do what's called the fast fill mod. These are the fill and vent tubes that I cut. Just throw them away after you retrieve them out of the tank. Just make sure this O-ring stays in here. If it's messed up, make sure you go to the Ford dealer and get yourself a new one, or give us a call and we can ship you out a new one. You want to find a spot that you can install the pickup tube. Somewhere around in here, somewhere around in here is usually fine. In this case, since we're going back towards the center of the truck in order to do our pickup tube line, I want it to be on this side. Now, if you remember, the cross member was right here, so I'm well behind that. And obviously, when that pickup tube comes straight down, it's not going to be in the way of any of the other lines that are in here. And in reality, if it is in the way, all you have to do is cut either one of these. It's not a big deal. You cannot, however, do anything with this. Pull my pickup tube, it's right there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark my sending unit top, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that nut out of there. Now that I know where it is, I'm going to drill it out to 7/8 of an inch. Now the pickup tube is installed. I'm going to reinstall this back into the tank. We have two different length pickup tubes that we generally send out with our fuel systems. The shorter one is for the short beds, the longer one is for the long beds. They are already pre-cut to length, they should be deburred, and they also are flared on one end. Make sure that it is the appropriate length for your truck. Typically we use like a dipstick tube or something similar to that. If it is too long, you can always cut it, and if it's too short, stop what you're doing and give us a call. We need to make sure that you have the right pickup tube. But like I said, they should be pre-cut. They should be ready for installation when you receive them. Okay, I installed the line for the pickup. This right here you're going to leave on whatever side it's going to be installed on. That way when you install the tank, it's already installed, ready to go. Depending on what your truck you have, you may need to use a tool like this in order to pop these loose. And then you're going to use the supplied fittings. They're going to go on there. And you're going to tighten them down here and here. And then these won't be able to come off. Your factory return will now be blocked off using this pipe plug. And then your factory feed will now be your new return line, which will obviously be hooked into a piece of push lock there. In this case, I opted for a 90, and you want to make sure that it runs down right beside the fuel tank like this as you install it, so that the line will be inside the frame rail when you are done. The pickup tube is installed. The line has got plenty of room. Follow it around here. What you're going to do is you're going to secure it along the way. You can use zip ties or wire ties, anything like that. And then you're going to cut it to length, and you're going to push it on right here. you'll notice that all of the pieces that I have U-push on, for the most part, are going to be straight fittings. That's because they're the easiest to push on. And then you can also see your return line that's coming through. See how it's behind the bracket? You can barely see it. There you go. And it just lays right there on the bottom of the frame. Same thing, you can connect that as well using some zip ties, wire ties, etc. I also installed my ground all the way back there. Up a little bit, use a little torch or hair dryer or something like that. Whatever you do not burn the line. This is warm soapy water here. You can choose to just spit on it or something, but I'm not going to do that today. A little bit of warm soapy water. Do not use WD-40, grease, or anything like that. Put the fitting into the hose like a little bit. Once you do that, push it on all the way until the line goes all the way inside that rubber collar there, the yellow rubber collar. Route your line, bring it over to where you're going to put it, spin it on, only do it hand tight, and what you're going to do is you're going to figure out what angle is best, probably something about like that. You're going to tighten this up, then you're going to tighten this up, and then you're going to go back through and make sure that all of these lines that you're installing are safe and free of anything that's in the truck. All I have here is the original factory Super Duty pump off of this truck hooked up to a power supply, and that's how I'm going to fill up this filter with diesel. Make sure that you lubricate the O-ring on the top and then spin on the filter that is full of fuel all the way hand tight. Do not use a filter wrench to tighten this down. If you install it with two hands, it will be more than tight enough. Notice there's an O-ring. The post pump doesn't need it, just the pre-pump. You're going to receive your kit where the 1/2 inch line is already pushed into the T. That's just for simplification of my kit. It's going to make it easier for you to install if you don't know what you're doing. But since I'm pretty well versed in installing these things, I'm going to actually go ahead and install the other end first, so that once I put this truck back down on the ground, I don't have to get back underneath the truck. And this line is going to go right here on that 90, and I'm going to route that through the frame rail. I'm going to zip tie everything up inside the frame rail, and then I'm going to lower this truck down and do everything I need to do on the top of the engine. Obviously, I'm going to also get the up-pipe bolts out while I'm underneath here. These are the up-pipe bolts that you're going to have to take out in order to install the fittings on the rear of your heads. They're probably the most difficult part of the install. You can see there's one right there. Here we have a 90-degree fitting and we have a 45-degree fitting. These are two of the more difficult fittings to push the push lock onto. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do this properly. It's in the vise, but it's not super tight. It's basically resting right on this little ledge on both of them. Bring the camera around here and you can take a look at what I'm talking about. Do not crush the body of the fitting. Do not put the nut in the vise. Make sure it rests on that ledge. Alright, I got a hose here. I already heated it up. Pushed on all the way. Now I have the feed and the return line routed along the frame rail. You see how it's zip tied together with the main power wire that comes back. Did that so everything stays nice and neat. I've got really nice big zip ties holding it in place. And now here is the complete kit installed underneath. Now we're going to come up top. First thing we're going to do is get rid of the turbo, get it out of the way, get the up pipes off, and then we're going to get rid of the degas bottle, the intake here itself. That way we can get down to where the fuel lines are, as well as take this off. And there's also a coolant line down there you can't see. I'm going to take it off so you can see the fittings that we're going to do, and we'll take this shroud off as well. It's all pretty simple. Get right to it. Okay, I took out a couple more things than I really needed to, but I did that so that you would be able to see what's going on here. Disconnect your lines down here, get rid of all the lines from there back, get rid of all the lines from there forward, take this guy out right here. Also, this fitting right here you don't have to remove, but it makes getting to this a lot easier. Also, take all your fittings out from off of the fuel bowl here. That's going to be getting cut off. You can either cut that off and then you're good to go there, or you can replace this oil filter housing with one off of a 6.4 liter. The reason I left these fittings on here is so that you can see where you would ordinarily feed into this fuel bowl if you used a partial A1000 kit. You'd feed right into here. I would give you the fitting you'd need to go into there, and then your factory feed lines would remain the same. However, in this case, we're doing a complete A1000 fuel system, so that fuel bowl is going to be going out of there, and I'm going to remove this so that I can show you how much easier it is to get the fitting in and out. Now we have the driver's side head fitting installed in the front. This is definitely the hardest fitting to install. In this case, I'm going to run my feed line down instead of up. That's completely up to you. I like the idea of running it down and putting the T right below, only because it's really clean, it's out of sight, nobody can see it. However, you can do it however you see fit. It doesn't really matter as long as you have 2 3/8 lines feeding the front of the heads. Here I have the driver's side head fitting installed. There is the passenger side fitting installed. I have all the return lines plumbed. You can see how it comes up from the back. I'll show you a little bit more in a little bit. See where I cut off the factory fuel bowl? I'll show you the underneath here in a minute, but for now, it's time to test for leaks. I have filled the fuel tank back up with fuel, and I got all the lines run, so here we go. You can hear it pressurizing the system. And I'm going to check the fuel pressure. In this case, it's already right at 60, so we're going to leave it alone. We're just going to make sure that this set screw here is going to be tight. There's a 3/16 Allen and then a 9/16 nut. We're just going to tighten that down right there, and that's going to keep us right at 60. Here you can see the line on the back of the passenger side head. You'll see how it fits. You'll see why I use the rubber on top of the stainless. Here you will see the driver's side rear fitting. Once again, you'll see why I use the rubber where I use it. You'll see how it is oriented so it will not hit the up pipe. This is a running video of how loud the A1000 is when it's mounted with double isolation. Here you can see the passenger side fuel line that's routed down across the cross member, as well as the driver side feed line that is routed down on the cross member as well. I'll show you where they connect on the other side in a second. I decided to put it back here. It's completely up to you. You can do it further forward, you can do it on the valve cover, you can do it in the valley. It doesn't matter where you split it off as long as you have 2 3/8 lines feeding the front of the head. I've let the pump run now for maybe 20 minutes or so. I've checked every single connection for leaks, and I would advise you do exactly the same. What I'm going to do now is put the truck back together, and then I'm going to install the wiring harness. You're going to cut your feed line that goes down to your pump. You're going to cut that to length. You're going to take it out, skin it, put the fitting on it, and then install it on position number 87. I snipped off the little white plug. You're going to make a connection right here on that pink and black wire with the braided red and black wire that I supplied you. What you're going to do is you're going to cut this wire to length, and then you're going to make your butt connection, and then you're going to heat shrink it down. Now the connection is made, and a common question is, does it matter whether it's power or ground hooked up? And the answer to that is no, because that is just signaling a relay, and all the relay needs is a power and a ground. It doesn't matter which side of the relay gets the power or the ground. Now the final connection has been made as far as from the pump and underneath is concerned. You're going to follow this wire over here. This wire you're going to connect to the power side of the driver's side battery. I'll make that connection dead last after I clean everything up and get everything back together. I now have the fusible link attached to the battery. Here is the wire that's going into position number 30 on the relay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this out, cut it to length, make my connection, and now when the key turns on, the A1000 should turn on with it. Here's an example of how loud the A1000 is inside the truck.